Hello everyone. We will continue our discussion on anonymity today and we talk about a method to preserve anonymity called mixing. So what do we want? So we said that in the last class we said that we don't want people to be able to connect addresses with persons. So if there is somebody A who has an address PA, we should not be able to make this linkage. Okay, that's what we want, and that would help keep the person anonymous. So how is it possible to do this? So in the last class we were looking at ways of de-anonymizing and seeing how we can sort of link addresses to persons. Right? We saw things like change address and so on, right? And different techniques which we could use. Right? So if a person, for example, uses two addresses in a transaction as input, we can probably link both those addresses as belonging to the same person. So how do we do mixing? And mixing is a method to sort of try to de-link these two. So let's think about it. Suppose there is a mixing service. So somebody announces on the internet that he is willing to do this mixing service. Okay, and he says, I will help you de-link these. Okay. So what we are going to start off with is, suppose somebody has got money. Okay, let's say A has got money, let's say in a particular transaction. Right, so let's say Z is paying some amount, 3 BTC to A, right? And so it comes, let's say, from Z's address. Okay, that says input in this transaction, and output is PA. Okay, with 3 BTC going to the output. So the question is, suppose somebody figures out that PA is belonging to A, the government or somebody. A is in a fix, right? We don't have this anonymity that we want. So what A wants to do now is he wants to give this money to the mixing service. The mixer is going to somehow give him anonymity. Okay, so the mixing service is offering this mixer. Okay, and this, let's say we give this money in here, and the mixer in return, okay, so let's say that we gave this 3 here, okay, and let's say that it divides this into 3 different smaller parts, okay, and suppose it gave this to A, right? So this is sort of a general idea. Okay, so A goes to the mixing service and he says, I am giving you these 3. So these are given by A. So these are totally new addresses given by A. He gives them to, of course, only he has the private keys, so he doesn't have to worry. Nobody else, once this money is given to these addresses, nobody else can spend it except A. So what he does is he wants to give his money to the mixer. So of course he would have to give it in the form of a Bitcoin transaction, and the mixer would pay him to 3 different addresses. Of course, this 3 addresses is just my example. It could just be a single address, as we'll see. Arvind Narayanan would recommend, let's say, a single one. So the idea is that nobody should know that these belong to A. No one should know that these belong to A. Of course, except for the mixer, because A is the one who is giving these addresses to the mixer, so obviously to the mixing service. So that person, of course, knows that these addresses belong to A, right? But suppose the mixer is, he's completely honest in that sense that he doesn't share that information with anyone. Then at least nobody should know that this belongs to A. So what might happen inside here? That's really what we have to think about today. What might we do inside here? So clearly there is some transaction payment here on the left side and some transaction payments to these addresses mentioned over here. And how are we going to do that? Right? So that's what we have to think to ensure that we have anonymity. So let's think of a straightforward mixer. So suppose A, B and C want anonymity. And they approach the mixer. Or let's say the mixing service. Right? So the mixing service, okay, so let's say each of them comes with some money. Let's say that A, B and C. So these are in Bitcoins. And right, I'm just drawing a sort of black box here for the mixer. The mixing service provides this mixer. And let's say for simplicity that we just have a single address given by A, B and C. Each of them gives one address. So A says I'm giving you A Bitcoin and I want pretty much almost the whole thing back, right? So we'll have to think how to incentivize the mixing service, but let's for the moment leave that aside. So A wants back his A Bitcoin, B wants back his B Bitcoin and C wants back his C Bitcoin. And he wants it back in such a way so that nobody will be able to link PA with PA1. And similarly for PB, PB1 and so on. Right? So we want back A, we want back B Bitcoin and we want back C Bitcoin. So how are we going to do this? Okay, so one way is that the mixer tells A, you pay to my address called P1, and he tells B, you pay it to P2, and he tells C, you pay it to P3. Okay, so let's say that happens. So these happen in individual transactions, right? Let's say this is transaction 1, this happens in transaction 2, transaction 3. So there are 3 different transactions here. So how is this payment going to happen to PA1, PB1 and PC1? So the mixing service has got the money from the 3 people, right? So we want to, so really you want to decouple these 2 addresses. So everybody gets to see these transactions. Remember that these are all recorded on the blockchain, and so we want to set up transactions in such a way so that there is no linkage between PA and PA1. Okay, so I mean there shouldn't be any connection in the graph, the transaction graph between PA and PA1. Okay. So what we might think of doing is that we might want to create a transaction which takes some money from these two. Okay, so maybe this is a transaction 4, let's say. So from these two addresses, the mixer is going to pay A. Okay, so you can think of these two as being input to the transaction and the output paying A to PA1. And you might similarly think that maybe these two, P1 and P2, could be used to pay C Bitcoin to PC1. Okay, and of course for paying some amount of Bitcoin here too. Right? So essentially the idea here is that the mixing service is sort of being opaque. He gets the money, right, and through some other, he gets his money into particular addresses, but he uses a different set of addresses that he has in order to pay the person who gave him money initially. So A paid using transaction 1 to P1, and he got back money from some other addresses of the mixer. Okay, so at least if you look at the transaction graph, there is no link between PA and PA dash, right? The link has been broken. So PA, somebody might see a link between PA and PC1, right? But these two addresses are owned by different people. So what we've achieved is we've achieved some decoupling between PA and PA1. So even if somebody knows that this PA belongs to A, they don't know that PA1 belongs to A, and so he could spend his money from here without worrying about people knowing his identity. Okay, so people don't know that this belongs to A. So this is roughly what a mixer is going to try to do. So we have to step back a little bit and think, how would this work? So suppose A pays small a bitcoins to P1 using transaction 1 and so on, right? Everybody pays. What if the mixing service is untrustworthy? What if it doesn't pay out? What if it just disappears with the money? Right, so that's a tricky thing which might happen. So essentially here we are trusting the mixing service that if I give him some money, then he is going to give me back some money, right, and almost the same amount. Right? So essentially we have to trust the mixing service over here. Of course there may be some advanced version, I'm not aware of it, but there may be an advanced version where you don't need to trust the mixer, and maybe that has to be done by everybody cooperating to make a transaction, right? Maybe some fancy method, but at least in the simplified method that I showed, where each of them makes an individual transaction to the mixer to a different address, and the mixer automatically pays them out from a different set of addresses, right? Then they've sort of thrown the detective off the trail, and the detective doesn't know that this belongs to him. Okay, so here let's just assume that we trust the mixer. So we trust that the mixer doesn't run away with the money. Let's say that mixer pays out money. Okay, so we have to think of a few other things. maybe there are other ways of linking PA1 to PA, right? You might think about it. So people might see that, okay, suppose they know that P1, P2, P3 belong to the mixer, then they know that A, B and C have paid these amounts, small a, small b and small c, and they see certain amounts getting paid out to these addresses, right? So you can look at the amounts being paid out and you can sort of connect the two, right? So there may be other information that is being leaked out, and maybe the detective can guess which address belongs to whom, right? So that's something that we have to think, what can we do about it? Also, we have to think, how do you incentivize the mixer? Why should he do this? I mean, if he's getting a Bitcoin and he's paying out a Bitcoin, then why should he do it? Because he is sort of getting involved. Maybe he gets caught by the government for doing it, right? For helping people be anonymous. And I mean, he also money has to be paid as transaction fees to the miners who include these transactions in their blocks, right? So I mean, how can you have exactly the same money coming in and the same money going out? That too doesn't make sense, right? So we have to incentivize the mixer, and we'll have to incentivize the miners by appropriate transaction fees, right? And how do we do all of this? So let's look at principles of mixers. So this is all that I'm discussing right now is from Arvind Narayanan's book, chapter 6. So let's look at the first principle. And the first principle is use a series of mixers. So use a series of mixers. So it would look something like this. So you have one mixer, sorry, B1, so each of these mixers correspond to a set of transactions, right, where A, B and C are paying the mixer to some addresses, and the mixer is using those addresses or even some other addresses that he has, and he pays back to addresses given by A, B and C, right? So nobody should know that these belong to A, B and C. Now this does some amount of mixing, but maybe there is some way for the detective to sort of link these up. Okay, maybe the mixing is not perfect. So what you do is you give this again, you can send it again to the mixer. So here I am showing that A, B and C are again going to the mixing service, but they don't have to do it. They could just quit with a single mixer. But in general, it's a good idea to mix several times. That's what Arvind Narayanan is saying. So you can go to, let's say that it goes through another mixer, offered maybe by the same mixing service or a different one. And so on. So, okay, so what Arvind Narayanan recommends is that a particular mixer may not be doing such a good job at anonymizing, right? Maybe there is something in the transaction graph or some side channel information or whatever, right, which is leaking out information. So by the way, I'm using this term side channel, which is a technical term in the security literature. So side channel it's something unexpected, so you might be analyzing a certain situation. Like for example, like we are looking here at mixers and at transactions, but what we don't realize is that there is other information which we are missing out in this diagram. There are, for example, when does the transaction enter a particular blockchain? There is some timing information which we are not including here. Okay? And that timing information, for example, could be used by a detective or an attacker in order to get some information which you may not have expected just by analyzing the situation, just for example, with a diagram like this. So side channel is something which unexpected in your analysis. You haven't considered it in the analysis. It's some information you haven't considered which an attacker can use, in order to get some information. So side channel attacks are very dangerous in security, because you can't consider everything in your security model, but an intelligent attacker can sort of figure things out, and for example, you might have a completely secure cryptographic algorithm which you're running on your machine, right? And you think it's superb, the mathematics is never going to be broken, and that might be true. But maybe there is an attacker who is running some code on your machine, right? And maybe, he's able to get information from the OS, about how much time your different modules in your algorithm took to run, because his program and your program are competing for OS resources, right? So by looking at the resources that he himself consumes, he might be able to guess how much resources your program, your cryptographic protocol was using, right? And that might leak some information, right? Even though the mathematics is very sound of your crypto, just that information about how long different modules of your algorithm are taking or your program is taking to run gives some information, right? Side channels are very dangerous, right? So we'd have to think a little bit about it, right? But here, anyway, so here what we are trying to do is we are saying that maybe a mixer is not so perfect. Maybe there is some side channel or whatever information which gives out some information. So we use a series of mixers so that hopefully at least one of them is quite good, so that it would be hard to link, let's say, this particular address which may be known to belong to A to this one. Okay. So the idea over here is use many mixers, and at least we essentially hope that at least one mixer is good. Is good at preserving anonymity. And maybe if one mixer is bad at preserving anonymity, it doesn't matter. Okay. So that's the first principle that Arvind Narayanan recommends. Then the second principle is to use the same amount as input. Use same BTC input to the mixers. Right, so we had talked about this a little bit earlier, that if A is paying some amount A and B is paying some amount B and C is paying some amount C to the mixer, then anybody, it doesn't have to be really, really smart, right, can guess which particular address belongs to whom. right? So we are saying, suppose somebody knows that this belongs to A, this belongs to B, this belongs to C, right? And they see that the same Bitcoin amount is paid here, then they'll be able to connect these two. Okay. So what Arvind Narayanan is saying is that A must be equal to B and must be equal to C, and this is called the chunk size. Okay, so you want to use mixers which take the same amount as input, okay, so that it becomes hard to know which of these actually belongs to whom. So we might wonder, what should the chunk size be in practice? So should it be, let's say, should it be 0.001 BTC? I mean, what should it be, right? Or, I mean, what should, if somebody were to offer a mixing service, what should he say that the chunk size should be? Now, this is a tricky issue because, I mean, different people may have different amounts of Bitcoin. Maybe there is a small person, who doesn't own a lot of Bitcoin, right? And he may want mixing. And if we say that the mixing, the mixer takes input as only half a Bitcoin, which is like $5,000, that may be too much, right? But there may be somebody who has in his address a lot of money, right? He got a lot of Bitcoin as payment for something that he offered, right? He doesn't maybe want to split it up into smaller chunks, because every time he splits up his money, he has to put transactions on the blockchain, right? And he pays some transaction fee, right? So he may not want to do that, right? So in general, a mixing service may want to have different offerings. So he might say that I accept 0.01 as input, I accept 0.001, I accept these three, any of these three, I can give you a mixer for them, right? And maybe there are people who want one type of service over the other, right? Okay, so we said that essentially you have the same chunk size. Okay, so and what we want is that the let's say, the thing is, you want the output to be roughly pretty much equal to the input. Yeah. So the question is, in the previous point we had said that we are using mixers repeatedly again and again, and now we are saying that the chunk size is fixed. So just think about it for a moment. So let's say that it was 0.1 was the chunk size, right? And 0.1 came in over here, right? So we have to have 0.1 coming in over here, right? Because otherwise the mixer wouldn't work, right? We wanted to have exactly the same amount here, right? So here, of course, I am saying that B has come in. Okay, or maybe let me just draw a new diagram. So let's say that we have a mixer, 0.1 is coming in from A, and B and C, let's say. Everybody gave 0.1 as input. And okay, so these are their addresses. And maybe you had D and E coming in here. To the second mixer, right? So A wants a lot of mixing, maybe B and C are satisfied with what they got, right? And so the mixing service says you have to give me 0.1, right? So D and E are giving 0.1, so A again has to give 0.1, right? And so we don't want, so ideally we want this mixer to give exactly the same amount, 0.1, back to A, right? So that he can give it again to another mixer if he wants. Okay, and this becomes an issue because we have to deal with the mixing fee. I mean, how do we incentivize the mixer? What about the transaction fee? Okay, so these are issues. I mean, after all, a mixer consists of a number of transactions, right? And I mean, and the transactions are going to take some transaction fee. Something has to be paid to the miners. So how can you take in 0.1 and give out 0.1? I mean, it has to be a little less than 0.1. And at the same time, you want the inputs always to be 0.1. So if somebody wants to recycle his output and give it to another mixer, like we said, when you have a series of mixers, then what he would have to do is he would have to add some amount from somewhere else. And that is a problem, right? So suppose the amount given as output is less than the input. So suppose A gave 0.1 as input, and suppose he got 0.09, right, as output. Now if he has to feed it into a mixer which takes 0.1 as input, he would have to add another 0.01 from somewhere, right? He would have to add these two together so that he gets 0.1. Okay, this would have to be a transaction. And this is a problem because somebody this is some other address, let's say P dash A, right? This also belongs to A, and this might leak out some information from, somebody may know that this belongs to A. Even if he can't guess that this belongs to A, he might guess that this belongs to A, right? And in which case we are losing anonymity, because we've got anonymity through this mixer, but because A had to sort of top up from some other address that he had, he may be giving out information. So then somebody might guess that these two belong to A, so probably this also belongs to A, right? Some detective might be able to guess it. So this is a problem. If you reduce the amount when you go from input to output of the mixer, that's a problem if you want to use multiple mixers. And if you keep the amount the same, then the question is, how are you incentivizing the mixer, or how are you incentivizing the blockchain miners to include transactions, because you want to give them some transaction fee, right? So here's a clever idea of Arvind Narayanan. So let me write that down as 0.3. So the fees are all or nothing. So it's a clever idea, I mean, but it's a little bit weird also. So what he's saying is that, I'll give you an example, maybe it will become clear with an example. Let's say that 0.1 BTC is the chunk, is the input chunk to the mixer, and with 0.99 probability, the user will get back 0.1 BTC. But with 0.01 probability, user gets back 0. So this is a little bit weird. I mean, so it's sort of like, I mean that if you've studied in your algorithms courses and so on, there's something called amortization, right? I mean, it's something like that. So what we are saying is that suppose there are 100 people coming to the mixing service. I am going to take everything of one person and I am going to give back everything to the 99 other people. Okay, so A is coming here to the mixer. A is coming to the mixer and he is giving 0.1, and the mixer is saying with 99% chance you're going to get back exactly the same amount, 0.1. But you may also get back 0 with a very small probability. And this has to be acceptable to everybody who's coming to the mixer. If you're coming to the mixer, that's part of the deal. Right? You will probably get back everything, but there's a probability that you get back nothing. So what would this give us? The all or nothing scheme. So suppose that we had, let's say, 100 inputs. I'm just taking a wild example. And one way to do it, let's say that you have 99 outputs. Right? So each of them is giving 0.1 as input. And 0.1 is given to all the outputs. So these can be fed into the next mixer without doing any top up or anything like that. Right? Any of these could be fed to the next mixer. Right? And 0.1 has been taken by as a mixing fee. So I shouldn't say just mixing fee, it's taken in general as a fee, and this takes care of both mixing and transaction fees. So one person has been penalized, it's part of the deal. Maybe the mixer will throw a random number and find out which of these he has to, whose money he has to take, right? And so if you're using the mixing fee, mixer many times, maybe you're okay with it. You're going with chunks, and 99% of the time you get back your money, and once in a while you lose it. And maybe that's okay for you, right? Yeah, so that's the situation over here. Of course, this all doesn't have to be, all done in one shot. There are many different transactions going, right? Maybe there are 100 transactions here, there are 99 transactions here, right? But pictorially, we can show it this way, that out of 100 people who are giving money, one person's money has disappeared, which goes as fee. And the mixer takes a part of it, and part of that money he also offers as transaction fee. So there are 199 transactions, right? And those have to give some fees to the miners to include, right? So he will split some of that 0.1 as transaction fees, and some of the money he will take himself for offering the service. Right? But what we've achieved here is that the chunk size is the same, so you can directly feed that chunk to another mixer if you want. Okay. So yet another principle with Arvind Narayanan recommends is that the client side should automatically and continuously mix. So continual mixing. By client. Okay, so what he means is that the client's software or the client's wallet, let's say, whoever it is, A, B or C, whoever, the client's wallet should keep doing mixing in the background. Okay, because there could be some sort of a side channel attack. Okay, so let's think about it. So suppose you have A, right? So let's say that Alice or whatever, let's A is Alice, right? And let's say that Alice goes once to a mixer, right? And she gets back her money, right? And of course, there are other inputs and outputs. We just ignore those. And this is on day 1, and let's say day 5, Alice goes again, right? And maybe it's a different address. And maybe day 7, Alice maybe goes again and gets some money, right? And of course the mixing service is there every day, or maybe it's there all the time. Different people are going to the mixing service and they're getting some money, right? So let's say somebody knows that Alice has gone to the mixer on these 3 days. Okay, so this information is known to the detective. Okay, and this is all not there, of course, just in the transaction diagram that I am showing, but of course, after the transactions get into the blockchain, you roughly know when those particular the transactions when those transactions were actually executed, right? So sort of know which the transactions of this mixer took place on day 1 and so on, right? And somebody knows maybe Alice is maybe has some particular gaming service or something, right? Or maybe somebody pays her on 3 particular days, and we know that she went on those 3 days in order to do mixing. Okay? But right now the detective doesn't know which of these belong to Alice, right? Because there are lots of addresses being created by that mixing service, right? Maybe they know about the internal addresses of the mixer. They maybe writes at P1, P2, P3 and so on. The detective may know something about this, but still it doesn't know that this belongs to A, right? Or this belongs to A and so on. But suppose Alice, let's say she takes money from these 3. Right, so let's say that these 3 are a transaction and she pays, right? And she pays to somebody else. So this transaction takes place later on, maybe a month later or whatever. And somebody sees, okay, that there is some person who has created, the detective is looking at all the transaction and he sees somebody has taken an output from this mixer on these 3 particular days to create a transaction. And he knows that Alice has gone on these 3 days. So it's very unlikely that somebody else went on those 3 particular days. If other people were like Alice, they probably maybe had gone on day 1, day 2, day 4, but why on these 3 particular days? So the detective can guess that this must be created by Alice. So he could make an intelligent guess, because the inputs are coming from these 3 days, and it's very unlikely that somebody else went exactly on those 3 days. Okay? So this is sort of like a side channel information, right? The information is not there in what we assumed or sort of thought could be leaked out, but it is there because we have sort of ignored the timing information on which days these particular transactions took place, right? Or when the mixing was taking place. Right, so what Arvind Narayanan is saying that Alice might manually sort of go to the mixer on these 3 days, but her wallet, which is a software which is holding her money, should go every day to the mixer. It should go 5 times on day one, let's say 5 times on day two, and so on. So that Alice is actually there on all the days. Even unknown to Alice, Alice may have manually gone on these 3 days. She had said, I want mixing. But actually, her software has been going continuously. It has been going 5 times a day, on every day. So when Alice actually makes a payment, her wallet is not going to take only from these 3 days, because she has outputs, many outputs on each day, in fact, from the mixer. And she can take from any of those to make the payment, right? And that is going to ensure that the side channel information is very difficult to clean, right? So basically, though Alice goes on day, let's say day 1, 5 and 7, right? Let's say that this is Alice, but Alice's wallet is continuously mixing, right, all the time. Right? So Alice has addresses, outputs from the mixer belonging to all of these. So when she makes a payment, she can take from any of these, right? So, and she could create a transaction. Of course, here the wallet would directly create it, and she pays to somebody. So now the attacker sees, okay, Alice went on day 1, 5 and 7, but there's no correlation between these inputs and those particular days, because her wallet was continuously mixing, right? So this is another principle that Arvind Narayanan gives, right? So he gives several of them. I've listed, I think, 4 of them, right? We have talked about mixing, where there is a mixing service, let's say somewhere online, and you can give money to that mixing service, and they will pay it back to you in hopefully, in an anonymized fashion, so that nobody can figure out that the new address in which you got the money is somehow related to the old address from which you gave money to the mixing service. But still, we have to trust this mixer. The mixer might do some mischief. He might run away with your money. That's possible, right? How do we know he's being fair in taking all the fees, right? So we said with a small probability he just takes away all your money. At least that's what is proposed by Arvind Narayan. So how do you know that he's being fair in doing that, and he doesn't only take your money every time and he's sort of, as fees, and he gives back everybody else's money, right? He should be sort of uniformly choosing whom to take money from, right? So there are all these issues, and maybe the fees that he charges is too much and so on, right? So can there be decentralized mixing? So just like we have a blockchain, which is a decentralized manner, or at least a Bitcoin is a decentralized way of maintaining a ledger and paying each other, can we have decentralized mixing? So here there is no central person offering any sort of mixing service, right? So it's sort of like we want to do something like a blockchain type of situation, where you have different people getting together, and without a central authority, you can do the whatever you want to achieve. Right? So here we want to achieve mixing. So can you have several people get together, let's say A, B, C, D and so on. Maybe it's over a peer-to-peer network, whatever, right? Or there is some way for them to get to know each other. Okay? And they want to do mixing. So they want to put money together and they want to mix it up. So is this possible to do? And let's think about it for a moment. How would we do it? So suppose they are able to identify each other, they would have to form a set of transactions which do the mixing. So A comes and let's say he wants to put a chunk in, B wants to put a chunk in, and so on. And the more there are, let's say, the better. You would expect it to be better in mixing, because we would not want to know who is getting paid, right? So let's say we put PD1 here, PA1, PB1. So they could just create a single transaction together which does this. Right? Let's say that all of them have the same amount which they are paying in, the same chunk amount. And okay, so maybe it would have to be a little bit less than 0.1 over here because of the transaction fee. Let's say that they are willing to give a transaction fee, but we ignore that for the time being. Okay, so we are saying that they are not necessarily doing multiple mixers and so on. They just want to do a single mixing, and so they just want to create a single transaction. And this would take care of mixing, because it has some inputs, but who's to know which of these outputs corresponds to which input, right? So somebody looking at the transaction on the blockchain may not know, right? So you might guess maybe with 1/4 probability, right? But if there are 10 people here, I mean, it's very hard for you to guess like which one belongs to A, for example. You have only a 10% chance of guessing. So how do we do this? So if they can create a transaction which does this, then we are in business, right? So there is no centralized mixer. They are not paying to a single person who pays out, right? There's just a single transaction which does the mixing for us. But how to do this? So first of all, it would have to be signed by all of them. I'm just going to write it like this. So it has to be signed by A and B and C and D. It would have to be signed by the private keys corresponding to these input addresses, right? And only then the transaction is valid, right? Only people who own these private keys corresponding to the public keys are allowed to spend the money and create this sort of a transaction. So how would we do this in a decentralized manner? That's what we would have to think about. And we have to be careful that somebody might actually cheat, or somebody might do some mischief, right? So suppose the government wants to play mischief, let's say, suppose a detective, let's say, and let's say the detective is D, and D wants to guess which of these outputs, public keys, belongs to A, okay? So we want to take care of those sorts of situations, because D is actively involved in preparing this transaction, so he might be able to figure out, if A, for example, gives both this key and this public key together, then the detective knows which output corresponds to A, right? And he might leak it out to somebody, whoever wants to know, right? So we have to do decentralized mixing, or somehow they have to figure out that if other people want to do mixing, they have to get together, they have to create this transaction, they have to sign it, all of them have to sign it, and at the same time they don't want each other to know who owns which of these output addresses. So how to do that? And there is something called CoinJoin. And let's look at the steps in CoinJoin. So first of all, we have to find peers who want to mix. So these are not Bitcoin miners or anything, it's just any Bitcoin user. So second, once they found each other, they have to exchange input and output addresses. And then they would have to construct the transaction which does the mixing, right? And once this transaction has been constructed, they have to send the transaction around. So in order for them to sign, they have to send the transfer. There's no centralized authority doing this. They have to send around that transaction, and each peer signs it. And once that has been done, they broadcast the transaction to the network, to the miners. Okay, and then it gets into some subsequent block in the blockchain. So this is what we do in CoinJoin, and we have to look at it a little bit more carefully. So how do we do each of these? So for this, we would want some sort of a peer-to-peer network, so that people can easily discover each other, and they might see that, okay, all of us want to mix maybe 0.1 Bitcoin chunks or 0.01 Bitcoin chunks and so on, right? And they sort of identify each other, and then they agree to sort of do this mixing. Now number 2 is a little bit tricky, because we said if somebody gives the input and output addresses at the same time, then we are in trouble, because if A says that PA and PA1 are from me, then the other peers get to know who, they'll be able to link the input to the outputs, and mixing doesn't make sense then, right? Because you don't know who they are. They could be the person you want to not know what address you have, okay? So you have to do this in some way. So the question is how to do this, right? So clearly for 2, A should not give PA and PA1 at the same time. Should not reveal PA1 at the same time or from the same IP address. Okay, so from the same IP address, if you give it out even at a later time, people will be able to make the connection. They know it's from the same person. So how are we going to do this? We will have to come up with some scheme. Maybe A tries to hide his IP address. Maybe he uses Tor, and maybe he uses maybe different entries from the Tor network into the internet. Okay, so he would have to do this carefully. So maybe A should use multiple IP addresses. So we can suggest this. A uses multiple IP addresses. And let's say maybe he can use multiple IP addresses or he uses Tor, right? So that people don't know who A is. It's coming from some mysterious Tor IP address, and he sends out a message, he connects with other peers that way, right? And he wants to do this at different times, right? So he might say that I want this address, I give you this address once, PA at one time, and I give you PA1 at another time, and so on, right? Okay, so it would have to be done in a clever fashion so that nobody can guess that A is giving it at, that A is giving both those addresses. What else could go wrong with coin join? Well, so these different parties are getting together. Right, so A, B, C and D are getting together, and we said that maybe they don't connect from the same IP address. A may connect through different IP addresses, right? And they might get to talk to each other and they construct this transaction. So we said that finally it has to be signed by all of them, right? And what somebody could do is, let's say that the detective, right, let's say he wants to play spoil sport. So he tags along with all of them and he creates this transaction, and let's say 3 of them sign it, right? So first of all they would have to construct the basic part of the transaction and then they send it out to different people to sign. So A, B and C signs, but then D refuses to sign, and without D's signature it's an invalid transaction, right? So somebody could do what's called a denial of service attack. So DOS attack, and one of the parties could refuse to sign. Okay, and so then he plays spoil sport. Every time somebody wants to create such a transaction, he joins in and plays along, and then he wastes that time, and then finally he doesn't sign it. Right, so somebody could do this sort of a denial of service attack, which prevents the service from actually functioning properly, right? Or you can think of some other attack. Let's say that D actually even signs the transaction, but in the meantime he has already spent money from the UTXO which he used as input. Maybe he has already broadcast a transaction to the blockchain, right? So this decentralized mixing has some advantages in that you don't have to trust some central authority, because he could run away. Here nobody can run away with your money in this sort of a situation, right? You only sign it provided that your output address has been put in properly, right? So some attacks can be prevented, but there may be new attacks possible here, right? Some sort of a denial of service attack. Right? So to summarize, what we are doing in CoinJoin is that A, B, C and D get together and they mention let's say they mention their input addresses, right? So somebody creates a transaction. Let's say first they create the inputs. One of them could volunteer to do this, create the inputs, right? Or as they are sending it, each of them adds his information as the input. Then maybe they connect, they are also connected to the same peer-to-peer network, but maybe through Tor, or they're using different IP addresses. And then they add the output information, okay, corresponding to the output addresses, right? So they're sending around the transaction and more information is getting added here. Finally, when the transaction is all ready, somebody is going to send it around, right? They send it to each other to get it signed. And once it has been signed by everybody, it is broadcast to the blockchain, right? So there's a lot of trust over here. You're trusting the other parties to add information and to sign it and so on. And as long as you're careful that your identity is hidden from the others, then you can't lose your money, right? All somebody could do is just delay this transaction from being created, or maybe make sure that it doesn't get created at all, but your money is still with you. You don't have to worry about that. Okay, so this is all that I wanted to talk about anonymity, and we look at other topics starting from the next lecture.